702.
World of Work.
And today we're discussing how to deal with unhealthy dynamics in the workplace. And obviously that begins with identifying what's healthy and what's not healthy in the workplace. But healthy workplace dynamics are sometimes ignored in companies' quests for profit and productivity. But they are not only integral to the success of the company, but these kind of dynamics can have a deep, lasting effect on workers' well-being and career trajectory. I mean, each person's vision of an ideal work environment obviously is going to be different, but in general, a psychologically healthy workplace is one in which co-workers are respectful of each other's personalities, of each other's ideas and working style, and also work is sort of like allocated fairly, and there's a trust that exists between co-workers, particularly between higher and lower earning employees. So I would like to know what kind of unhealthy dynamics you're dealing with in your workplace, because there's a variety of that. And of course, as I said, it's so subjective. So you tell me what's unhealthy about your workplace and how have you navigated that? Have you raised it? Have you decided just to go to work and don't bother concentrating on that because it drains your energy? How are you navigating the unhealthy environment in your workplace? You can give us a call on 011-883-0702 to share your thoughts with us, or share your experiences on the WhatsApp line on 072-702-1702. Ashwin Rajah is a human performance strategist and organizational performance consultant joining us in studio to guide us through this conversation. Ashwin, thank you for making time for us. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Clement. Thank you for having me in the studio with you.
So we for us to even have a conversation about how to deal with unhealthy dynamics in the workplace, we have to define what's unhealthy in the workplace. But I suppose that's also too broad of a question because it's so subjective. But in general, what would you say makes an environment unhealthy?
So let's look at how workplaces are structured, right? People work in teams. People come together to work with other people to deliver on strategy and vision of an organization. And to do that, people are coming from different backgrounds, different work backgrounds, different home backgrounds, different work experiences, different cultures. So to expect everyone to come together in a corporate or a business and work effectively, we underestimate the complexity of that to start with. So there is naturally going to be a level of dysfunction in the workplace unless you intentionally work towards building that. Now, I think the biggest element that you mentioned already is trust. How do you build trust amongst people in the workplace? Because without trust, people don't engage. And if you don't feel safe to engage and share what your thoughts are, what you disagree with, even a way forward in your team, how do you want this team to perform better? You may have views, but your views are not heard, or they're not respected, or they're shut down. Right? So communication becomes the second layer. Right? When communication is allowed to flow freely in an organization, that builds healthy engagement. Right? But building block for that is trust. Right? So those are the top two elements in an organization, I think, that leads to a more healthy environment where business can thrive and people can thrive.
Yes. So you spoke about the complexity in the workplace where people of different personalities, different backgrounds are all merging in this environment. Of course, there's going to be some dynamics there. So how does then a company deal with that? How can it anticipate? Is it a matter of ensuring company culture is affirmed and that's how you deal with it? Or are there other ways companies can anticipate the dynamics and sort of start dealing with it as people join the organization?
So I think if you start with expecting there to be a level of dysfunction, and there's always a level of dysfunction, the starting point before even you get to cultures is I would start with trust. How do you get people to trust each other? And trust is about talking openly about things. Now, trust means different things to different people, right? So I need to rely on people to deliver certain things. And if someone lets me down, my perception of them changes. So building trust becomes complex within a team or business environment when you work with people regularly. And it depends on, is there a relationship between us? Do we have a connection? And it takes a while to build a connection for someone to trust them. It's not natural that we share everything about ourselves with everyone immediately. So, but that relational element, the connection, the human connection, is fundamental. Being competent in what you do, being a person that you can rely on, those are things that allow people to trust you, right? So that's the first. How do I build trust in the relation? Secondly is, how do I give trust? Right? So don't judge people when they do things that you don't expect. Try and understand from their perspective. Right? So you've got to give trust and do things that allow people to trust you. It works both ways.
Yeah. So for someone who says, well, I feel unappreciated by my superiors, my managers, in my workplace, can something like that create tension, and change the dynamics of the workplace?
Yes, 100%. I think when you're having these feelings, when you're having these emotional situations where you're feeling negative about something. For example, I'm feeling undervalued, underappreciated. Have the conversation, right? So be very clear on what it is that you think you can add, where you can add value, and how they can use you more effectively, and then go and have a constructive conversation with your line manager. And the important part of these conversations is they shouldn't be emotionally charged. They should not be reactive, and it should not be emotional. It's a constructive conversation where you're owning your point of view, right? You're not blaming someone else in that conversation, saying you're not using me. Saying, I think I can contribute this A, B, and C, and I think this is the impact it would have.
Yeah.
How could you use that more effectively? Right? Simple conversations where you're owning what you're sharing. You're not blaming someone else and making it their problem.
Yeah. You're reflecting also within. Okay, 011-883-0702. Give us a call. Send us a WhatsApp voice note as well, 072-702-1702. What are the unhealthy dynamics that you're dealing with in your own workplace? And how have you navigated that? Have you elevated issues and escalated them to HR? Did you sit down with your manager? What is unhealthy about where you are currently working now? And how are you dealing with that? Those calls and WhatsApps, please. I'll get to them in a moment. Where do people begin, Ashwin? Like, where do I start? Who do I talk to if I'm realizing that, okay, wait, this environment I'm in this workplace is actually not healthy? Do I speak to HR? Do I bring up my manager? How would you advise listeners who are in this situation?
Yeah. So I think the important part is to define for yourself, when you say it's unhealthy, what about this team is not healthy, right? So firstly, is the team delivering the performance, the results that they're mandated to do? First question. And if they're not, then there's a discussion to be had. Second, is it about accountability in the team? Is it about communication, or is it about trust? And those are the three fundamental building blocks, I think, that affect how teams work. And when you can pinpoint it, then you can have the conversation. Start at the source. If it's a peer in your team where you see the problem, then have the conversation with the individual. But again, not an emotional conversation, constructive dialogue where you're owning your perception, your point of view, and knowing that the way you see a situation is your perception. Right? It may not be reality.
Yeah.
So have the conversation knowing that and owning that. And you can also have that conversation with the line manager. Right? The line manager has a responsibility to make the team work effectively and perform effectively. So doing it without blame, where you're owning your perspective, can add value to people as well. And often people do things in the workplace unaware of the impact on others. It's not a deliberate impact they have on you, but you experience it in this way all the time. Right? So I think always engage. One of the biggest challenges in workplaces is that there's not enough communication. And when that happens, people then fill the story. They go home and you've got this open loop where you think someone's intended something and you don't know. So your mind fills in the gaps and creates a story around it. And that if you haven't got the real facts, that story becomes your reality.
Yeah.
And those are the things. And that also drains you. It becomes emotionally draining, and it burns unnecessary energy. So have the conversations, engage with people. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but it's healthier to deal with it and have healthy conversations.
Yeah. So poor communication then can contribute to misunderstandings then that make the environment
100%.
to you as unhealthy. There's someone who's asking, one of our listeners who's asking about like disagreements. When there are like sometimes hectic disagreements among team members, and they're asking, is that something you would consider unhealthy? Does that depend, do you think, depend on how respectful or disrespectful those team members are in their disagreement? Because of course
100%.
disagreements are healthy, right?
Yes, exactly where I'm going. So I think a healthy team should have 20 to 25% of disagreement, but healthy disagreements. And unhealthy disagreements when it's emotional, it's personalized, and it's reactive. Right? You don't want to do that. But where you're owning your point of view, acknowledging the other person's point of view, challenging it without being disrespectful, owning your point of view, that's the challenge. This is my perception of the situation. This is I think would be better. That's healthy conversation. That's healthy conflict. And teams actually don't do that enough, because often when you've got teams of 5 to 10 people, because it's small, there's a collegial relationship. So people feel uncomfortable challenging people. It's almost like we're going to disrupt this environment, and I'm going to look bad if I'm challenging. So we don't do enough of that in business, in the workplace. We need a lot more challenges, but constructive, healthy challenges.
Yeah. I've got some more messages coming through on the WhatsApp line from our listeners. Leah says, Clement, I have a manager who is completely unapproachable. And if I speak to the boss, she's going to treat me much worse, especially since the boss doesn't live in South Africa and she controls the office. So it's about how unapproachable the senior manager is. And this is what this listener considers as unhealthy. Another one says, Hi, Clement. I have a boss that is always negative towards what I do. He has sent me messages in the late hours of the night speaking negative about what I do. I have involved HR, however, it has not worked. We don't speak by ourselves. There should be a mediator when we have a meeting. Work is extremely negative and toxic. Work for me is sad, though, due to my family needs. I go daily, so I don't have a choice. But I've tried to speak to him. However, they have not yielded any positive results. So how I work now is that I avoid him. That's a question there from Anonymous in Johannesburg. Is that the best strategy, to just avoid?
No, it is a sad situation, and I've seen it often. When once the relationship is damaged, it's very hard to fix it and repair it. And it sounds like there's history in that relationship. If he's critical of her or him, I think it was a her, then there's history that may need to be resolved, and it may need a third party to resolve it if it's got to that point. But not, you need to think about what you're getting from that work environment. Are you getting the learning and growth you need from it? Why are you staying there? If it's not serving you, because it sounds, that situation, I've known people who, as that person describes it, are clinically unwell. They become mentally, you get depressed, medication to cope with it, because you're spending a significant portion of your time in an unhealthy environment, and it's not good for people's stress levels and mental health. So I would say try and resolve it. Maybe the resolution is not pointing out what the person is doing, but asking questions. Let them give them a chance to resolve it. Acknowledge with the line manager, our relationship is not working. How can we fix it? And leave it. Just let them try and fix it. Right? Don't try and fix it yourself. So ask a question. Try asking open questions to try and resolve it, and let them see how they respond.
Yeah. Mbali, you are calling us from Eastgate. Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to add my 2 cents that I work in a toxic environment, and the person who makes it toxic is my manager. And and it's in the way she addresses people, or me specifically, I don't think she has emotion regulation, if I can put it like that. And I've raised it with HR, but I feel like it's a character thing, because like shortly after that, she just went back to being her toxic self, or unprofessional rather. So I don't know, as sad as it sounds, I've just learned how to deal with her.
Mm.
and not take it personally because she's like this, literally. And there's people who used to work there and are like, oh, no, she is like that. It's not you only. So it's so difficult. And I've raised it with HR. So I think also we need to know that sometimes it's not a fixable thing. Like, it's who a person is. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Which, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
if it's not fixable, then it means then for you, Mbali, in that workplace, it's not going to be a healthy
mm,
workplace for you.
no,
And
but I don't let her get to me.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes it does happen where I'm like, oh no, what she did is not okay. But I'm just like, you know what? It's who she is, and yeah,
sure.
unfortunate.
Yeah, Mbali, I'm sorry to hear that, and all the best. Strength to you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Ashwin, I mean, Bali's tactic is just avoid them, but learn how to work around them. So, at what point as employees do we then accept a situation that may not really work in our favor, just so that we're able to just coexist in the workplace?
I think in Bali, the fact that you're coping with the situation, you're tolerating it, and you've got feedback that this person is the similar with other people, and it's not, you're not taking it personally. I think you're dealing with it in a relatively healthy way by not personalizing the feedback you're getting.
Mm,
So the question is, does it impact your performance? Can you still deliver? Because for you to move out of that team to move to another team, you need to still perform. You need to be shown, be visible as someone who's still producing results and doing what you do really well.
mm,
And if you can still do that, then that's great. I would still suggest to the manager, have another conversation, right? I know it's difficult, but this time talk about how she can get better impact from the team. Acknowledge what
mm,
she does well, because everyone's doing something well, right? Even in an unhealthy workplace, an unhealthy team, there's going to be 30%, 40% of things that are going well. So start from the positive, acknowledge what she does well, and guide her in terms of what she can do and get better results from the team. So position it as a benefit to her, not a benefit to you.
mm-hmm.
Try and shift it in that direction when she's in the right energy mode. But a lot of it is personality driven, and leaders find that what's worked for them previously, driving results in their way, they do, seems to work for them, but they get to a point where it's going to fail them. And I've seen
Mm,
that often in the workplace.
mm-hmm. Another one says, "Hey Clement, staff is quick to criticize. It's tough as management when when commitments are not kept, gossip, accusations, etc. It's not a one-way situation." Another one says, "Clement, I'm in a situation where I work for a company that doesn't have HR. The owner does everything himself. He employs his friends in high positions, and I'm not getting help from these friends. When I complained to him, he told me to find another job and protect her friends. It's so unhealthy that me and my team end up doing everyone's tasks, and my team is suffering. Anything goes wrong, me and my team are the ones that are getting blamed for it." Sanita, you are in the Johannesburg South. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Go ahead.
I'm well, thank you. No, I was just saying, I just spoke to the lady now, and I
Mm,
explained to her that, there's some people, regardless of where you work or your workplace can be as much toxic. However, some people are still getting paid 17 rand per hour for a
mm,
12-hour shift.
mm,
And if you look at that 17 rand, I mean, the law requires you to at least pay a minimum of 30 rand 23 cents per hour.
mm,
So people are basically going home with nothing at the end of the day. You understand? And now, with our country having gone into the cheap labor, companies find it better to employ foreign people, foreign nationals, to pay them 17 rand an hour,
mm,
which is way below the
mm,
minimum wage.
mm. So in some cases, then the unhealthy thing that exists in that workplace is that there's just exploitation. You're not being paid, properly for the work, the kind of value that your work has. Ashwin, what is psychological safety though? how do we define it, and how does the lack of it create these unhealthy workplace dynamics? Because it would also be naive of us to think you're going to find a job in a place where there are no issues, where you don't disagree with people.
Yeah. So psychological safety is really about, am I comfortable sharing my thoughts openly in an environment without judgment and without repercussion? Right? So can I be vulnerable in this space without people judging me? Sharing my thoughts, also sharing emotions. You can talk about emotions, but often people, it's not done in the workplace. It's not accepted. So that's the building block of it. It includes trust. Part of trust is, do you feel safe to talk openly with people? So trust falls underneath psychological safety. I think in a nutshell, I'd leave it at that.
Another one says, Clement, I'm facing double standards from a co-worker in a team formed for a specific project. There are several times when I raised this issue with the person, she dismissed my concerns, so I gave up and then opted for doing what the other team member does to the team. Then she crushed out, and that was it with the project progress. That's a message there from Anonymous. Another one says, Clement, I have a manager who says she believes in transparency but uses this belief to discuss stuff with other staff, even things that should be private or confidential. I've learned that she simply cannot be trusted, and I'm extremely careful about what I say to her and around her. It makes things extremely difficult because she's a person that should be the first point of call to resolve issues. There's that issue of trust.
Exactly.
That we started with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that can really get so complicated.
And again, a conversation with the line manager, acknowledging that I've shared this with you, I trusted you, and I've heard it come back to me through other people. Let her know that the people she's talking to are not she's trusting people, and they're not holding her trust.
Yeah, all in the name of transparency. Well, Ashwin Rajah, thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation. Really appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much, Clement. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, Ashwin Rajah is a human performance strategist and organizational performance consultant.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.